type of natural disaster or man-made disaster is a psychological event to somebody.
Another important impact is the emotional impact of a disaster. The best predictor of how people will deal with a crisis is what their functional level was before the crisis.
This kind of work is hypnotic, that it is incredibly engaging.
You need to take care of yourself. That's the number one rule. Take care of yourself and your buddy after a disaster.
It's a normal response to an abnormal situation.
Disasters are dynamic events. They can occur seemingly out of nowhere, and they can challenge a community and community members. As CERT volunteers, you are being trained to support the first responders in your community and to be strong and vigilant members of a team. In all ways, you will be challenged, but if you are prepared, you will be more successful and helpful during the event and more able to rebound easier in your own life when the crisis is over.
Nice and easy, don't hurt yourself.
But just as there is a physical environment in a crisis, there is an emotional environment as well. And whether you are an experienced first responder or a citizen who is being trained for the first time, understanding some of the dynamics of disaster psychology will be very helpful to you.
When bad things happen, which do happen, because that's just the way life is, whether it is, as I said earlier, a man-made disaster, or it's a natural disaster like an earthquake or tornado or floods and what have you, we respond because that's the way we are wired as human beings. We respond, and we respond in a number of different ways. We respond emotionally, we respond physically, and we respond socially.
If you don't understand psychology and the way people think, then you won't know how to react when you see the kinds of behaviors that you're going to see. And that's the whole point of the psychology approach here.
And there may be a wide range of feelings and behavior that people will exhibit. Some people define it as a normal reaction to an abnormal situation.
And a person may respond in a typical way for them, or they may respond in an atypical way for them, depending on the incident, depending on the scope of the incident, how close the incident feels to them. Now, some people are able to really kind of bend with the wind and manage and cope with lots and lots of very unpredictable and powerful, overwhelming events. They may be able to do that during the incident. They may have a delayed distress response after the incident. But a lot of people can come through incidents, and I've seen this in war situations. People come through extraordinary things and then go on, and their natural support system seem to be enough to help get them back on an even keel.
Of course, there are great differences in coping styles, and even in the ways that people from different cultures, religions, and ethnicities will react.
Just to give you an example, in certain cultures, it is not encouraged to express emotion. You're supposed to kind of pull up your socks and be able to deal with it. And while you want to take care of that population, we still need to be respectful that this is not someone who is going to just come out and start to really engage in a conversation, and you may want to take a different approach, and you may want to invite them into helping because maybe they might feel better that way, earlier on in the process than later.
But the important point is that during a difficult situation, you can be empathetic and supportive, sometimes by doing or saying very little.
Let's say, for example, where someone's lost a family member, there's really nothing you can say. There's nothing you can say that's going to help. Nothing's going to mitigate that for them. What people need is support. You know, sometimes putting an arm around them and just being supportive and listening and seeing that their needs are met. That's what's important.
The segments of this video will help you learn more about how to deal effectively with the physical, emotional, and psychological reactions you may see brought on by a crisis. You'll also learn strategies to ensure your own health. Here's what follows. The CERT volunteer, working together as a team. Helping people cope in a disaster. Helping children and youth. Helping the elderly. Helping yourself and your teammates. Managing people in crisis. Disasters are very stressful experiences. And as a member of a CERT team, your responsibility is to work with your team members and take on whatever challenges you are assigned. But the first step in being able to help others is to make sure you have your own house in order. That means being psychologically ready, but also having all of the details in your own home worked out so that you know that your family members are safe and taken care of.
The first thing you want to do if there was a disaster is make sure that your own family is okay, make sure your own house is safe, and then you want to get together and meet up with your partners and your buddies and your other CERT members in your community, and then you can come up with a plan and start to operate in a systematic manner so you can go out and do the most good for the most amount of people.
As a CERT volunteer, you are part of a team, and your teammates will be a source of strength for you as you work together in the disaster areas. Of course, you will work hand in hand with your buddy and with the team of first responders in your community.
You don't go anywhere by yourself. You always go with your buddy. You need to take care of yourself so you can help other people.
To work together in a team, for one thing, it's a safety issue. We want to make sure that if something happens to me, my partner is going to be there, or we consider it their buddy, is going to be there for them to assist them. And if I'm injured, it's somebody that can aid me or maybe go get help if I need help. We just feel that in a way, two heads are better than one.
Because you'll be operating as part of an official team, community members will look to you for information and answers. You'll be perceived as a leader during the situation and must be confident about what you're doing.
The CERT teams are there to take the lead. They're there because they've been trained and they're in a perfect position to take the lead. And the CERT team members, however many of them there are, his job is to organize their neighbors into a workable workforce to protect and take care of their backyard, their community, their street, their building.
Another important strategy is to keep communicating with your team members.
One thing is just to brief people as they come into an incident, to let people know if they're going to be really disturbing images, you know, what they're going to see, so that they're not going to go through an emotional shock just walking onto the scene. They'll be able to steel themselves a little bit emotionally and, you know, have a better chance of staying in that middle zone.
Here's what you'll want to remember. Be prepared. Have your own emergency supplies organized. Establish emergency plans for your home and family. Work with your buddy. Work with the team. Work with the other teams of first responders. Be ready to be a leader. Keep communicating with your team members. Expect people to react. After a disaster occurs, people will experience a range of emotions, and they may exhibit a variety of emotional, psychological, and physical reactions depending on their loss. As a team member, you may have the responsibility of helping to manage and stabilize situations. For you to be effective, you need to recognize how to deal effectively with different populations in the community, such as children, the elderly, persons with disabilities, and adults. When you work with these groups, some of your reactions will be intuitive and natural. But because people are under acute stress, they may react or overreact more than they would normally.
It became very clear that our being able to focus our energies in the right way to manage situations could result in a clear management of the situation, to stabilize it, to increase the calm, increase the peace amongst those people going through it right then.
Sometimes in a crisis situation, people will overreact when they are part of a group, as emotions are contagious and seem to spread from one person to the next. As the CERT team member, your job is to keep the group calm. At times, this may mean separating someone from the group if they are extremely troubled.
Stabilizing a group that's engaging in that kind of thing involves sometimes trying to separate out and contain the people that are agitating or creating that kind of a response in the larger group, and also providing whatever kind of information you can that will help to stop that process.
Here are some general strategies for dealing with adults after a crisis has occurred. Listen to them, support them, reassure them, comfort them, distract them from the situation, encourage them to breathe, encourage them to walk around and walk with them, keep groups calm, give them accurate information about what's happening and will happen, try to find out answers to their questions, encourage them to follow instructions of first responders and law enforcement personnel, involve them in helping others, stay calm yourself. During and after a disaster, everyone is stressed and feels unsettled. But for children, being involved in a disaster can be frightening and confusing.
Just like adults, children too are affected by disasters in a number of different ways. But we forget that children are not miniature adults, and so they are affected socially, they are affected emotionally, and it can also impact their cognitive abilities.
Of course, children will react differently to a crisis depending on their age.
And so when we work with kids who have faced a disaster or an act of terror, we really need to be mindful of what the age of the child is. And so our approach to how we work with them or how we talk to them about what might have happened really would be impacted by that.
Younger children have fewer emotional defenses and less cognitive ability to deal with the crisis situation. Young children can confuse reality and fantasy, and they can be very fearful.
Children are terrified by these things just like adults are, and they don't have the understanding that adults have in an event. Children don't understand, for example, that a hurricane has gone by and that another one's not right behind it. We make the assumption that they believe that, but they don't know that. They don't understand that concept.
I think the other thing is young children really sometimes blame themselves. You know, they indulge in what we call magical thinking. And to answer these questions, sometimes they start to think that, you know, if I had just picked up my clothes this morning, maybe this wouldn't have happened. And it is amazing, it is really amazing, because kids have such imaginations that they're trying to make sense of this all. And that they somehow think that they had something to do with it. And I think if you hear that, as a grown-up, you're going to say, no, honey, I mean, no, not at all. And you can just imagine how comforting that may be for the child to think it is not something they have done.
But even though we may want to protect children, it is still a good practice to be as honest with them as we can.
Very important to be upfront to children and older people and let them know what's going on. And experience has shown that if you are very direct with children and the elderly and tell them exactly what's going on and what's happened, they tend to react very well to that.
It's intuitive that we want to take care of our little ones. And so sometimes we don't want them to see bad things, we don't want them to hear bad things, but they are. And so for us to say, don't worry about it, really is doing a disservice to the child, because you're shutting that door of dialogue. And then the child is left with these feelings that the grown-up has kind of given the message, don't talk about it. And so it's really important for us to acknowledge what has happened in a very simple, age-appropriate, developmentally in line with where the child is. Ask the child, what's your sense what happened? Because that will give you an indication. If the child says something, a lot of roofs got blown up, we don't have to give a more sophisticated explanation. So that gives you a kind of a bar of where the child is, and you kind of either raise it or lower it depending on what the response is.
So volunteers should try to talk to children about their feelings, just as they would with adults.
Take a little time to say, how are you feeling and how are you doing? You're opening a dialogue. Now, some people walk through that door and others don't. But at the same time, we need to be available. We need to be somewhat reassuring. We can talk about, well, you can actually even make a statement, well, this must really upset you, or, this is really a difficult situation you're in. You're just trying to open a dialogue with the child. We are here to help, so be available, be reassuring, and then talk in a language that you think the child will understand. And are there any questions you have? And depending on how much time the person has, you can actually take it a step further and say, what can I do to make you feel better? Different children will respond to that differently. Some might want to talk, others might want to play a game with you, because the younger children, after maybe a minute, they're done. So sometimes we don't appreciate that, and we kind of keep at it. But the children they've gone to another issue, and so you need to be where the child is. And sometimes that's hard to assess, but I think if we pay attention to it in our own minds, we'll do a better job of it.
Sometimes something as simple as a toy or teddy bear can be very helpful in comforting a child.
If we do have to place family members in a shelter or be away from them, particularly with children, we like to make sure they have something familiar with them. A doll, a bear, a toy, something familiar that child can clutch to. It is very, very helpful for them. It's also important that if you say you're going to be back in a couple hours or you're going to call in a couple hours, you do that, because they're watching the clock even if you're not.
Older children and teenagers may feel better if they are given tasks to perform.
Everyone can help in some way, shape, or form. And I think that's really important. In fact, I would encourage those, because then they feel that they are just not witnessing this helplessly, and that they must be important enough that someone actually values what they have to offer.
So when you work with children and youth, respond appropriately to them based on their age. Make sure that younger children are never left alone. Shield them from the scene of the disaster. If you need to, put them behind a car or bus and away from any dramatic scene. Keep them warm. Give them water and food. And of course, unite them with family members as soon as you can. And remember, sometimes with children, you may have to explain the situation again and again and reassure them that everything will be all right.
Know what the psychological responses are. Know what the differences are depending on the age of the child. Know that everyone is affected. Know that most people are resilient and will get back and will bounce back on their feet. It's a normal response to an abnormal situation.
Key points to remember helping children. Be gentle with children. Listen to what they have to say. Begin a conversation with them. Be honest. Get on their level, literally. Talk to them at their height. Hold the child. Make sure children are not left alone. Shield children from the scene of the disaster. Keep children warm and give them water or drinks. Reunite children with family members as soon as possible. Explain the situation clearly, again and again. Give them something to comfort them, a teddy bear or doll. The younger the child, the more supervision he or she needs. Give older children tasks to do, such as helping with the younger children or taking on other jobs. Today, more and more Americans are living longer and living independently in their communities. And within the elderly population, there is great diversity.
If someone is cognitively intact, not demented, high functioning, they're going to react the same way that a younger person may react. Those people are attentive to the news, they've paid attention, they've thought about what they're going to do. They will have disaster emergency kits and phone numbers and things like that prepared just as a younger person would. And some people and some studies show that the elderly are in fact more resilient in the time of a disaster because they have experienced problems in the past.
But although elderly people may be resilient, they may still need some special assistance during an emergency. Oftentimes, you may need to help them with their physical needs.
Sometimes people get along fine on their own, but they move more slowly, and they may have difficulty with going quickly. Also, they may be hearing impaired and may have trouble hearing what people are saying to them. So it may be necessary for emergency workers to speak loudly, for example, more loudly than usual. Or visual impairment may also be a problem. People may have a reduced visual capacity, and that may also really impair their ability to respond to instructions.
Some elderly people may also experience cognitive problems. Over the age of 80, it's estimated that 40% of the elderly may have some form of dementia. This dementia may leave the elderly person confused and unclear, particularly during a stressful situation.
On the other hand, someone with cognitive impairment, somebody who is mildly or moderately demented, still living on their own in the community, but maybe dependent on neighbors or family members or spouses or children to help them with basic organization, they may have very difficult time understanding that something is going wrong. One of the characteristics of dementia is a difficulty in absorbing new information. And also another characteristic of people with to moderate dementia is a real dependence on routines. And disruption of the routine may be very hard for them to understand.
So, volunteers should assess the level of functioning of the elderly person and then respond accordingly. For instance, you may need to repeat an instruction to an elderly person several times, or you may need to give them more time to process their thoughts, or help them move around. Elderly people who live in a nursing home will also need a great deal of assistance.
Nursing homes have their own disaster plans, but we're dealing with a population like a hospital population where people are often bedridden or are quite frail and are unable to ambulate really without assistance. They may have hearing and vision problems, they may be wheelchair bound, but that's a much more difficult proposition to evacuate a nursing home facility.
Of course, elderly people can also be very helpful during an emergency, and they like to be useful.
They're a great resource for us. We don't use them very often, and they want to help, they want to participate, and they should be allowed to the extent that they can. They feel useful. We all want to feel useful, and too often older people are a great resource that's just not used.
CERT's workers can benefit from having a checklist when working with the elderly.
I think it would be a great idea for the volunteers to have a short checklist to go through when they're evacuating an older person. Do you have a hearing aid? Do you have eyeglasses? Do you use a cane or a walker sometimes? Do you have dentures? Where are your medications? Can we take your medications with us? Do you have an address book or a list of emergency contacts so we can take that with us? Those things would be most useful, and that's a short list, could be gone through very quickly, and that would help both the older person being evacuated and the volunteer make sure that they've covered everything they need to.
Key points to remember. There is a great diversity among elderly people. Help elderly people walk or get around. Remember, they may have hearing or visual problems. Encourage elderly people to leave their home if necessary. Be aware some elderly may be confused or disoriented. Repeat instructions several times if necessary. Give extra and kind attention. Give them tasks that they can handle. Make them partners in your efforts. It's clear that when people are victims of a disaster, they will react. And even though you are part of the helping team, you can still be strongly affected by the experience.
Volunteers themselves are having the same responses. You know, they are not any different from the people who are directly affected by what's happened. And so I think it is important to be in tune with yourself as well. And we don't allow ourselves to have the same feelings. And so there's a lot of burnout amongst people who are the helpers, if you will. While we are helping everyone else, we need to help the helpers.
A person who is new to emergency work suddenly can find themselves in a position of being overwhelmed by the intensity of it. They themselves may be either overreacting or underreacting. But later on, even if they're functioning well at the time, they may later discover that they're having delayed reactions to it. Everybody can get into situations that can create that kind of delayed reaction. And anybody who says that that's not true simply hasn't lived long enough yet. They'll get there eventually, particularly doing emergency work.
Oftentimes, people don't pace themselves and keep working and working because there is so much to do and they want to help.
We do know that that people rushing in to help others in times of a disaster will work till they drop. And it's not uncommon to see workers work 12, 14 hours straight without any break. And so it's incumbent upon somebody who's in charge to make sure that the people working stop, rest, get hydrated with some fluids, get something to eat, get some rest, or you burn them out. Once they're burned out, they could take 3 days to recover from it. So you've got psychological and physical stress all working at the same time. We all learn to try to pace ourselves and to try to give ourselves a proper break.
When we check ourselves and we check our buddies and we see that, you know, we're under a lot of stress and things are getting a little bit out of control, that might be the time to say, we need a break.
Because working in a disaster environment can be compelling, sometimes it is difficult for volunteers to leave the situation.
And people get very attached to incidents, and it's really hard sometimes to know yourself that you need a break. Sometimes it takes somebody from the outside, or a buddy, or a team leader, to recognize that it's time to stop, to talk, to eat something, to drink something, and rotate somebody else into those kinds of activities.
And it is also important to the success of the team that volunteers understand the stresses they are experiencing so that their teams can remain unified and effective.
CERT teams have to be fully aware of all the gambit of psychological responses to events. Otherwise, their teams won't hold together. People get uptight, they get upset, they say things they shouldn't. The group can't wear their emotions on their sleeves and get angry and break up, or the team won't hold together. It's important in the team leaders and the stronger people in the team to keep the teams together, to understand the emotions that are going on. People get upset and have every right to be upset. They get angry, they get sad, they go through a lot of experiences.
It's also important that you check in with your teammates and make sure that they are handling the situation all right and are not spiraling up or down. Often, first responders tend to under-respond because they are focused on the job. So it may be easy not to notice that a team member is even having a difficult time.
But you've got to have somebody in charge that's regulating how long people work, because at some point when you get tired, you become a liability. You have a chance of getting injured now, and so it's very important to pace that. And so that we do try to tell whoever's leading the operation to make sure that they pace the people and rotate them in their duties and things like that.
And everyone has their own hot spots or areas that they cannot work in or that are too much for them. Everyone needs to assess what they can handle, and you should not feel that you have to work in every situation. And if you are uncomfortable, you should have yourself reassigned. Find other tasks to do to support your team's effort.
Folks who have been in emergency work for some time usually have a tremendous capacity to let most things just run off their back, like water off a duck's back. It doesn't get under their skin. But when you hit the right Achilles heel, when you hit the right area of vulnerability in their particular life, where this situation parallels a situation that had defeated them before, or this situation reminds them of a particular horrible situation that had happened before, that they're carrying baggage about, then they are more vulnerable than other people in just those particular places.
really know yourself. It's not only just permission, it's what you should be doing. Check yourself. If you find yourself becoming unduly distressed and a little break is not enough, take yourself out if you can. You know, do something else and come back for the next one.
Everyone needs to find ways to relieve stress in their lives. Especially when you're working in a disaster situation, it is important that you take extra care of yourself. For some people, exercise is a way to relieve stress. Other people find other ways, eating a healthy diet, relaxing with family or friends, or connecting spiritually.
One of the biggest things that you can do is be hydrated and proper nourishment. You know, alcohol, caffeine, and those types of beverages are not conducive to lowering stress in those kinds of environments, and typically that's what people load up with: coffee, sodas, beer. And that's really the wrong stuff to be taken. People need to eat, they need to get water, they need to rest, and they need to talk. That's an important thing, being able to talk with each other, and that'll minimize the stress.
Talking or debriefing with other volunteers is also important to your health. You need time to talk about your experience and what went on during recovery operations with others who were involved.
I would really urge the volunteers to have their own way of talking about what they've experienced, whether it's in groups or whether it's in a more formalized or informal way. But it is absolutely critical to take care of yourself, because otherwise you're not going to do a good job of the people you're trying to help.
You'll also be involved in official debriefing sessions that can be very helpful.
Debriefing is about pulling the team back together after it's had a difficult experience. It has an organizational level, not just a personal psychological level. Debriefing is what we do normally when we get together with other people who have been through something difficult and we just talk about it. A formal debriefing has very clear steps that have to be gone through in order to be utilized in terms of its maximum potential.
It wasn't exposed.
When we go into emergency situations, we must learn to keep ourselves balanced inside, to have a running dialogue with our deeper self about what in this situation moves me. And keeping an eye on that, go ahead, but protecting ourselves first.
Key points to remember: find your own way to manage your stress levels. Exercise. Eat a healthy diet. Connect with family and friends. Connect spiritually. Talk about the experience with other volunteers in informal and formal debriefing sessions. Experts now recognize that some people will need assistance during a crisis. Their normal response to this abnormal situation may be exaggerated.
Now, there are times when that response can go a little awry, and people can become a little bit too over-aroused or too under-aroused. But when we're in the middle, we're able to carry out a lot of extraordinary actions.
In other segments of this video, you were introduced to some basic strategies for helping people cope after the disaster. Now you'll learn some strategies to help people who are exhibiting acute stress reactions during a crisis.
We're stabilizing the individual to cope with the situation here and now. And so we're doing things like taking a stronger personal role as a leader, being very clear in what we're saying, sizing up whether the person is able to make decisions themselves or not, guiding them and in terms of utilizing their personal inner resources better, and gradually take them from the extremes of behavior, which are largely dysfunctional, back to their own personal center so that they are functional.
Experts have identified 3 kinds of acute stress reactions: overarousal, underarousal, and shutdown. A person who is overaroused is probably easy to identify. He or she may be panicked, hysterical, or rageful. They may be sweating or breathing rapidly. They may be agitated. Their thinking is catastrophic. On the opposite end of the spectrum is the person who is underaroused. The person who is underaroused may be acting or moving slowly or may be even immobile. They may appear pale. Their affect may be numb or dismissive. They may be disassociated from the present or appear to have shut down. The most dramatic stress reaction will be seen in someone who is shut down. Their stare may be vacant. They may show little responsiveness or emotion. They may have a lack of muscle tone and are immobile and slow. People suffering from these stress reactions can be helped. Watch these scenarios now that demonstrate some helping techniques and then practice them later.
Hey, how you doing?
Look, I can't talk. My house is burning down. I can't talk right now, okay?
Right, what's your name?
Owen, look.
Oh, and I'm here with CERT. I'm with the fire department.
Do you know if my brother's okay?
That's what we're finding out now. See the fire,
I'm not
see
sure
those
if it's okay.
firefighters right there?
Yeah.
Okay, they're going in. They're going in. They're going to go
They don't
get
know?
them. They're going to
Did he get out?
They're going to go through. They'll go in to get them. No, this is tough. Just
Yeah.
so we can focus a little better, would you do me a favor and just breathe with me a couple of minutes?
But look, I don't have time. My house is burning down. I don't know if my brother's going to be alive.
They're in there. They're in there. Okay? They're taking care of it. Do me a favor. Just breathe with me real slow, okay?
All right.
Just breathe in. Nice deep breath.
Right.
Push your belly out. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 2, 3, 4. Let it out. Let your belly relax. 3, 4. And hold it. 2, 3, 4. Let's do it one more time, okay? Big breath. In. 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 2, 3, 4. Let it out. Nice and relaxed. 3, 4. And hold it. 2, 3, 4. Okay, we're going to walk over there, okay?
All right.
Keep breathing while you walk over there.
All right.
All right? We're going to see what they're doing and find out what's going on.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Ken. I'm with the CERT team, with the fire department. How are you doing? What's your name?
Trevor.
Where do you live, Trevor?
I live in that house.
Where the fire is?
Yeah.
What's going on? Can you tell me what's going on?
Smoke and I saw fire and I don't know really what's going on right now.
Okay, Trevor, would you like to find out a little bit more about what's going on?
Sure.
Take a deep breath. Like that. Take a breath. Another one. Yeah, do another one. Good. That's good. Okay, listen. Let's stand up everybody, okay? Stand up. There you go. We're going to walk over and see what's going on, all right? Can you come with me?
Yeah, I can come.
All righty. Let's take another breath. Okay, good. Come on, let's walk this way. All right, come on.
Hi. How are you? How you doing? I'm Joanne from the fire department, the CERT team. What's your name? Okay. Do you think that you're hurt? Do you think you can get up and walk out with me? I want you to take a few quick breaths, okay? Just so that you can tell me what's going on, okay? Ready? Breathe a few breaths with me, okay? I'm going to take a few kind of quick breaths to sort of get you going, all right? Ready? Breathe in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out. Good. Can you shake your hands out? Can you shake your feet for me? Can you stand up at all? Okay. Tell me where you're hurt now. Okay, you know what? We've got a team of people that are coming through, and they'll help to take you out, okay? They'll help to carry you out so you can get some help, all right? I want you to keep on breathing, okay? I'm going to move on so that I can see if there are other people in the other room, all right? But you remember that there's a group of people coming behind me, and I'm going to make a mark here on a tag that lets them know that you should go out as one of the first people, okay? All right, keep on breathing now. They're coming right behind me, all right? Okay.
Although a disaster situation can produce strong reactions and panic in some people, most will be able to stabilize. But for some people, their stress is too great, and they do not respond to any of the helpful strategies you've seen demonstrated. These people should be referred immediately to a mental health expert. Refer people to a mental health expert immediately who are having a serious cognitive disorientation, appear stunned, have hallucinations, have bizarre beliefs, are hysterical or showing uncontrolled emotionality, seem disconnected or unfocused, are agitated, are having a profound withdrawal, are showing ritualistic behavior, are unable to protect or care for themselves. Key points to remember. During an acute stress reaction, a person may be over-aroused, under-aroused, or shut down. There are strategies to help people who have acute stress reactions. Most people will stabilize during and after the stressful event. People who are profoundly stressed should be referred to a mental health expert immediately. Disasters are challenging for everyone involved, but the work can be compelling and richly rewarding. As a CERT volunteer, you are making an important contribution to your community. Remember to work with your buddy, work with your team, and take care of yourself.